Hello, welcome to Instructional Pedagogy, Teaching and Learning During the Pandemic. I'm Heather McMullen. I'm one of the directors of Instructional Leadership, and I'm excited to lead this session and work with you today. Here's what you can expect from this session. This is a 1-hour professional learning session and includes a Schoology quiz for record of completion. There's lots of audio and video in this professional learning session, so make sure those are working. And look for this graphic, a light bulb with pencil, and we'll say action step. Each time you see an action step, listen to the directions and then pause the video to do your processing. Restart the video when you're ready to begin again. Each of these action steps will help you complete the quiz at the end of the session. The last slide in this video includes a long list of references and resources used to create this training video. There's also a one-pager located in Schoology with the same references. So if you want to learn more or dig in deeper, click on those references in the one-pager. Our what and our why for this session are located on this slide. Our what is to really deepen our knowledge of what online instructional pedagogy looks like, and through that, increase student learning and provide equitable access. The why for this session is pretty self-explanatory. Instruction must change when we shift from teaching face-to-face and in classrooms with students to teaching virtually or online. The last few weeks, you've learned lots and lots of new technology tools. And so I hope with this training that you're able to put those tools to use with recommended instructional pedagogy for virtual classrooms. Our learning today is divided into 3 sections. We're going to keep it real, think outside the box, and then the last section is less is more. So here's our first action step. This is a variation on the what, why square. And what I'd like you to do is find something to write on, either OneNote or a pencil and paper, whichever way you best keep notes. We will revisit this what and your why at the end of the session, so make sure you keep it close. What do you hope to learn today in this session, and why might that be important? Pause the video to write and then restart when you're ready. Speaking of trying something new, this next video, made by a school in England during lockdown 2020, as they call it, really sums up that place we're all in now. Unless you've spent many years teaching online classes, or maybe have a master's degree in virtual learning, this is all new. So just a little humor to kick us off.
Morning, girls. It's so lovely to be in your homes today, and I look forward to us going on
coffee.
Sit on that and
Cooks, what are you doing?
I'm just trying to upload a video for the kids on my
Your camera's on, man.
which means that it's 2 words that we put together to make another word.
So I'm going to just share one Bible verse with you today, and the I'm gone. Letting him go.
Moon and light form moonlight. The next word we have is cooler bag. Cooler bag can also be a compound word, cooler and then bag.
And he was always the hero.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be starting term 2 with you.
and we have got Simon, I'm recording! Oh gosh!
So, my advice for studying this section. 2 timelines. Keep one for the opposition movements or the liberation movements, and then one for what the government.
So let's define 2 terms related to virtual learning. You may have been in a webinar or perhaps read something online and saw these terms. I thought that this graphic really helped clearly explain the difference. So synchronous learning is when students learn at the same time, and communication is in real time, kind of like what happens in our own classrooms, just online. Asynchronous learning is when students learn at different times, and communication is not real or live. The benefits to this type of learning is that it can be convenient and also provide flexibility for you as the teacher and also the learner. Kids could work at their own pace. For this action step, you're going to make a Venn diagram in your notes, or a list even would work. But add some instructional or communication tools to each category. For example, you might add email to asynchronous learning, and you might add a class Zoom meeting that's live to the synchronous learning category. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. Pause the video while you make a list, and then restart when you're ready. Okay, for our first section called Keeping It Real, we're going to talk about 3 things. Well, actually 2. Connections, Maslow, and more connections. Our first Keep It Real tip is connection before content. This graphic, I thought, really captured the place we are at, teachers, students, families, that we are circling around a pandemic, which we've never had to do. And then we're also doing school at the same time. And so you can see trust, connection, routine, and learning are all important in this very, very difficult time that we're in. In Zaretta Hammond's book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, she refers to several studies that confirm what we know to be true. I'll read from her text here. Rapport is generally defined as a sympathetic connection with another person that results in that warm, friendly feeling you get when you're in sync. In culturally responsive teaching, rapport is connected to the idea of affirmation. Affirmation simply means that we acknowledge the personhood of our students through words and actions, and that says, I care about you. Trust frees up the brain for learning, creativity, and higher order thinking. Beyond affirmation and rapport, trust is built by selective vulnerability, that we are willing to let our guard down and allow ourselves to be seen as human beings and learners too. This information, written during a time when we were not in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, rings powerfully true right now. Let's watch a short clip narrated by the author, Zaretta Hammond, where she describes the connection between learning and trust.
So again, we come back to the learning pit. How does this relate to students being in that learning pit? Well, being able to be in a collaborative, interdependent, collectivist, cultural-oriented classroom is going to help them move through the learning pit. And it's going to help them build that next piece of the learning partnership, which is alliance. Because as students move to that learning pit, it's going to get hard. That amygdala is going to get hijacked. So part of what we know is students will need care and push. It's not enough just to have rapport. You're building that fuel so that you actually can get students into that zone of proximal development. So the teacher uses trust as the fuel, because once students give you permission to push them, you will have to keep renewing that trust, using collectivist ways of connecting as the way to generate that. In my book, I talk about what are the trust generators. There are some strategies and techniques that actually help you do that.
Our keep it real tip number 2 is remember Maslow. We all had Maslow's hierarchy of needs instruction when we went to teacher school or principal school. And I really like this graphic that Jeff Utek used in a presentation in Washington State in just last month. As you can see, of course, safety, physiological needs, love and belonging all need to be at the base of what we do. School is at the top. So especially in a crisis, it's even more true than when we're in our regular routine in classrooms and buildings. Jeff Utek, an experienced school and system leader, was a teacher and leader during SARS, MRSA, and a bombing in Kuwait. In the upcoming video clip, he talks to Washington State educators in April about his experiences related to distance learning during a crisis.
So first and foremost, if you don't know, I am Jeff Utek. I was born and raised in Spokane, graduate of Central Valley High School here in front of you, and went to a community college, Olympic Community College in Bremerton. So spent some time out on the peninsula where I met my now wife, and graduated from WSU, go Cougs, with an elementary ed degree. My wife and I taught here in the States for 3 years before we decided to move overseas. And it's those experiences overseas that actually has helped me to bring back here. And here's what some of those experiences were of how we ended up, or how I ended up kind of where we are here today. It just so happened in 2003, my wife and I were living in Saudi Arabia, and due to terrorism, we had to go into a distance learning situation. And I want you to think back to this, right? In 2003, there are no cell phones. Oh, well, they're flip phones, but we don't have smartphones. We had a 56K dial-up access, and we had to graduate our first class of seniors. We had to figure out how to get them credits, and we had to get them to be able to walk across the stage. In 2005, my wife and I, we've moved to Shanghai, and we end up in Shanghai when the SARS outbreak happens in Asia, and we ramp up at that school as well, go into some kind of crisis mode of getting teachers trained up, getting systems put in place. We never ended up closing in Shanghai, but we were ready to rock and roll there as well. And then in 2009, my wife and I moved to Bangkok and taught there for 4 years. These are all American international schools, American curriculum standards, much like we are here, just in these different countries. And due to flooding in Bangkok and the H1N1 outbreak, we end up going into virtual school for about a month, or distance learning for about a month, and going through a very similar system. Because of that work and the work that I was doing when I spent my time internationally, in 2011, I was actually invited to Washington, D.C. and worked with the State Department and senators and finding funding and setting up a global virtual school installment. So for international schools, this crisis would happen for international schools, that they would be able to quickly move to a distance learning situation. And part of that system helped propel international schools to start thinking about blended learning, which is really what this is. If you were doing blended learning before this happened, it makes it such an easy switch. That's got to be our focus moving forward as we get into this. But we were able to set up that system that, you know, is allowing schools to do this internationally as well. The other part of this is we have to understand that our friends in Asia are 10 and 11 weeks into this, and we are learning a lot from people who are a lot farther down this than we are. And so we need to take those experiences. And lucky for me, with my time that I've spent in Asia, I still have a lot of contacts there, so we know what's working and what's not working. So that's kind of the experience that I'm bringing to this when we get started. And the first thing that we know when we're talking about this is, and this is what I've loved about our state, is we've been focused on these hierarchy of needs of our kids, that we must first, before we ever worry about school as school is, or talk about trying to assess kids, we've got to fulfill the psychological safety needs of our students. We've got to show them that there are love and belonging. And we know for many of our students that love and belonging was school, was this physical place we called school. And before we ever worry about getting kids back into a learning mindset, we must fulfill these basic needs, which is what I love that we have spent these first couple weeks getting food out to kids, making sure families are safe, checking in with our most vulnerable kids, and trying to fulfill those psychological and safety needs. As we move forward into virtual school, we are going to keep that our focus. We must engage our students at that level before we ever expect to see any type of learning happening in a crisis distance situation. So that's going to be the focus that we're going to use as we go through this, this phase.
Okay, for our Keep It Real tip number 3, it's kids want to see you. On a podcast called The Most Important Ingredients to Remote Learning, Kelly Croy says, first and foremost, you have to make a connection with your students. At least one connection during the week, which could be a video of yourself or a scheduled class meeting with cameras on. Some teachers are scheduling small group class meetings or using office hours with a video. It doesn't really matter what it is, but let kids see you. Here's a short clip of teachers from all over the world keeping it real.
Good morning, boys and girls.
Good morning, small humans. It is, gosh, what day is it? Let me check.
Just wanted to say good morning. Let you guys know again that we really miss y'all.
Can you give me an elbow greeting? Good morning, Elliot.
I'm excited to see you. It's kind of cold, and I'm outside because I need fresh air.
I'm sporting my soon-to-be 6-year-old daughter's Frozen headphones.
I miss seeing your happy faces today. I hope that you're enjoying a day that you get to stay at home and use your computer to do school.
I know things have been a little like a roller coaster ride with ups and downs lately.
I know that this is not like regular school, right?
Feel free to do school in your jammies, I guess. That's basically the whole advantage to e-learning.
It's PJ Day, so I'm in my jammies. I hope you are too.
And with me today is Thomas O'Malley.
Today we have some really fun and exciting activities for you. Isn't that right, Spike?
Some of our friends from the classroom also really miss you guys. So, let me show you. Yep, our reading buddies.
Oh, she's a little sad because she misses you. But you know what? They're gonna come back soon. I promise you.
I miss nobody groaning at my puns.
I miss you all. I miss every single one of you.
This has been a lot. This is a whole new process for us.
This is a brand new way of teaching for me, and I'm sure that this is a brand new way of learning for you. So we're going to be very patient with each other.
Take care of yourselves. Please, 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 I cannot stress enough.
You are wonderful, and I can't wait to see you again.
Hopefully you guys are staying busy, staying active. Make sure you get some exercise.
I'll see you in a bit. Take care.
Okay, it's time for an action step. Create 2 lists, strategies you found to keep it real and connect with students, and a second list with 2 more ways you might connect with students that you've not already done. We're going to revisit this quick write at the end of our professional learning session. So pause the video while you write and restart the video when you've finished. Okay, we're ready for our second section in this session, and it's called Think Outside the Box. There are 3 parts to this section, and that is flexible grouping, creative schedules, and thriving students. Think outside the box tip number 1. This is the time for flexible grouping. You could group your students to include all the students in one subject area. For example, I heard of one teacher who's meeting with all of her chemistry students in one big meeting. Or you could shrink your groups to just meet with students who have skill-specific need. Also, this is the time for one-on-one video conferencing. I've heard from teachers that say they normally don't get the opportunity to spend time with just 1 or 2 students. And so we're really thinking about how we can take advantage of this opportunity to meet with students in a different way. Let's hear from Jeff Udick again in his presentation where he talks about grouping.
Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to think differently. We are no longer teaching periods of students. We're teaching them all at once. We have to understand that the idea of school no longer exists. The idea that you're going to go somewhere and you're going to go through classes that are 50 minutes long or 55 minutes long, that is a paradigm that only works in the physical world that we are not held to now, nor should we hold kids to it. In a virtual world, we get to think different. And we are seeing some school districts and teachers start setting this up differently. I have a teacher now who has put all 4 periods of algebra into one Google Classroom. Because why wouldn't you allow a student in period 1 to learn from a student in period 4? And as a teacher, instead of having to answer the same question 4 times like I had to do in the physical world, I answer the question once and all my students see it. I have another teacher from our state who came out and said that she was a band teacher for middle school and high school. She created a Google Classroom that was all of her band kids learning together. Because in the physical world, those kids had to be separate. In the virtual world, they don't have to be. And what if middle school kids get to interact with high school kids around band? What if you took Algebra 1 students and Algebra 2 students and put them in the same Google Classroom? What if your Algebra 2 students could help and support your Algebra 1 students? See, we get to think differently about even the way we structure classes. I have schools out there that have already started and put all of the 8th graders into one Google class to help build community. How are you using your home base to help build community and take some pressure off of teachers that I don't need 4 different periods? I need 120 kids to teach. So we get an opportunity here to even think about the structure of school in a way that maybe we really haven't been able to think about the structure of school in quite a while. The next thing we need to do is we need to set up office hours. And our office hours are here to fulfill the emotional needs of our students first. Now, over time, these office hours are a great place to check in with your kids. Hey, how are you doing on that assignment? Do you have any questions about what we're doing this week? But first and foremost, our office hours are about fulfilling the psychological and safety needs and making sure our kids feel love and belonging.
Our next think outside the box tip is creative and consistent schedules. Consistency is important for you and your students. Drop days. Let students know when assignments are dropped into the platform. For example, new assignments always drop on Tuesdays. Feedback days. Let students know when you'll give feedback. For example, feedback days are always on Monday. Class meetings. Will you host large or small synchronous learning groups? And office hours. When are you available for check-in via video conference or phone? Keeping a creative and consistent schedule will help both you as a teacher and the student and families. Think outside the box tip number 3. Some students will thrive. Read these quotes from Puyallup teachers just in the last few weeks and think about who might be thriving in your virtual learning. I pulled some quotes from an article that was on Edutopia called "Why Are Some Students Thriving During School Closure?" All school year, Monique Woodard's 7th period, her last class of the day, had been her hardest. I feel like I don't know what to do with them, she said of her middle school science class when Edutopia first talked to her back in the fall. One boy in particular, the class clown, was a persistent challenge, and his behavior influenced his 23 peers, 15 of whom were boys. But reconnecting months later during the coronavirus closures, Woodard shared some surprising news. the same boy was thriving during remote learning. I think not having those everyday distractions in school has really allowed for kids like him to focus on the work and not necessarily all the social things going on, because some kids can't separate that out. Woodard teaches in Washington, D.C. I thought that was a great quote from that article, and if you want to read more, it's in the references link, the last slide of this presentation. Okay, we're at an action step, so we're going to process this think outside the box information. We talked about schedules, we talked about grouping, and then also why some students might thrive in this new situation. Of the new ways that you're teaching and learning, students are learning and you're learning and we're all learning during this pandemic, what ways might you bring, or what strategies are you going to bring back to the brick and mortar classroom? And why those strategies? What have you discovered about this new way of teaching that might inform the next sort of normal way of teaching? Take a few minutes to write, pause the video while you write, and then restart the video when you're ready. For our final section in instructional pedagogy, we're going to talk about less is more. We'll talk about quality versus quantity, super essentials, and acknowledging the extraordinary. Less is more tip number 1, quality over quantity. Edutopia asks for input from teachers through Facebook around the work about the mental approach needed in order to stay grounded during this time. Hundreds of teachers replied, and the article Teaching Through a Pandemic, A Mindset for the Moment captures the themes. You'll also find the full article in the resources. One important tip about quality versus quantity related to time online, content, assessments, assignments, practice items. Think about ways to assess in shorter chunks. Assign a few quality practice items. Deliver content in short clips. Here is Jeff Utek talking about research on engagement and attention, as well as the benefits to short, asynchronous videos featuring you.
Moving forward. The other thing we have to do is we have to start understanding how to make good instructional videos. And that's where we're going to use the app Screencastify or Screenomatic. These are asynchronous videos. So I'm not doing this in real time. I'm doing this, and then I'm going to post this video in Google Classroom, Schoology, whatever my home base is. There's a lot of research. The research is down in the links around this. It's incredible what we are learning. And here's what I love about this. This isn't about distance learning. This is just good teaching in 2020. This is starting to understand that we have a different brain. We are teaching a media first generation. And there's a whole other keynote I do about that. Don't have time for that today. But we're teaching a media first generation, and video speaks to them. And there's research out there now that shows that video works. Video works in giving directions and instructions to kids. Here's what some of the research says. This is research out of Vanderbilt, which you can find in the links at the end of this slideshow. But the first thing we have to understand is our videos are no longer than 6 minutes. Actually, 3 to 5 minutes is the golden spot. So your videos of new instructional material for your students need to be asynchronous so that they can watch them anytime, any place. And they have to be between 3 and 5 minutes long. Now, I had a teacher the other day said, okay, well, I'm an algebra teacher. It takes me at least 15 minutes to walk kids through this equation. Fantastic. What we're going to do then is, and the research, it's weird. This is the human brain. The human brain says we would rather watch 3 5-minute videos than 1 15-minute video when it comes to instruction. We want it chunked down, which is why when you go to YouTube to learn something new, you look for the time of the video, and you will skip over a video that can explain something in 30 minutes and watch the video that'll explain something in 3 minutes, because that's about the time we want for instructional videos. So if I'm a teacher, and I know it's going to take me 15 minutes to get through this algebraic equation, I'm going to make a video that's about 3 to 5 minutes long, but there's going to be an action at the end of the video. So, hey, here's the first part of the equation. Now, what I'd like you to do is at the end of this video, you're going to go and you're going to work through the first part of the equation. Once you've got that far, then you're going to come back and watch video number 2. And then the start of video number 2, the teacher says, did you do it? Did you get through the first part? Awesome. All right, here's where we're going to go now. Watch first, and then you're going to pause me, or this will be the second version, and then you're going to go do again. So I work you through the next version. All right, you're going to go get that far. When you get back, watch video number 3. So you can still have a 15-minute video. They're going to be chunked in 3-minute parts. And the reason why asynchronous video works, the reason why it works, and again, this has nothing to do with distance learning or virtual learning. This just has to do with good teaching in 2020. Because when we make asynchronous videos, we give the pace of learning over to students, right? We give the pace. When I'm talking like this on a YouTube Live, you don't own the pace. You don't own the pace of which information is coming at you. I own the pace. I'm owning the pace of information. If I talk faster or slower, I'm deciding at what pace the information is coming at you. But when we make a video and we allow kids to watch it when they're in the right mindset, when they're in the right space, we allow them to control the pace of which learning happens. They can pause it, they can rewatch it 100 times, they can fast forward, they can rewind. It's incredible what happens when we give control, ownership of learning to students. And one of the ways you can do that is through giving them ownership of pace. Understand we're teaching a media first generation. Your students love and want to see you. The research behind your face on the screen is unbelievable. Yes, you can go use a Khan Academy video. They're fantastic. But if it is that child's teacher teaching them with the expressions that you use in the classroom, with the way you explain things, your voice, your facial expressions, we see learning increase. And that's the power of every teacher knowing how to make asynchronous videos.
So our less is more tip number 2 is get super focused. We have many identified essential standards for each grade and course in our district. During this time, we must focus on what one might call super essentials. Start with your major clusters and enduring ideas. Ask your colleagues what they want students to know for sure, like the colleagues before you and after you, when they get to the next grade or the next course. Dig deep into that super essential and allow multiple modes of exploration. What are the 1 or 2 standards you can focus on this spring that will ensure connection to the next grade level or subject area? And then as we move into next school year, what are the really super essentials that we want kids to leave our grade or our course with? And we can guarantee that they are going to know that. This is even more important as we approach fall, and we know that some students have not had the opportunity to engage necessarily in the full breadth of our instruction. And so we will be thinking about these ideas at a bigger level, but right now start thinking about what are your super essentials and big ideas. The Achieve the Core website offers an easy way to see enduring ideas and major clusters for each subject area and grade level. The link is in the resources if you want to know more, and I have a small screenshot down in the bottom of this slide just to remind you. You've probably seen these documents before, but they're really helpful to help us focus on super essentials. Okay, less is more tip number 3. Acknowledge the extraordinary. This is an extraordinary time to be teaching. Check in with yourself. Schedule breaks, do something physical, give yourself a break. Check in with others, reach out to your colleagues and say hi. Share ideas and lighten the load for each other. This quote comes from an article on Edutopia, Prioritizing Self-Care While Working from Home. Reset your baseline. We're all operating in the shadow of a global pandemic, and it is disorienting and limiting. Business as usual is unrealistic. The real points to consider are not strict adherence to regular conditions and how to structure distance learning like more typical learning experiences, but how to provide a rich experience to all learners who are now without traditional teachers standing next to them. Sometimes we can get overwhelmed by the volume of tech tools, apps, information, things to do. We are doing new and extraordinary things to provide school during a pandemic. Be proud of the learning you've done. Be proud of the displays of resiliency from teachers, students, and families. Be proud of the creative and inventive ways you've found to connect with students and maintain high expectations for all students. So, what's next? We're not sure, but we do know is that we are all becoming better teachers. Well, it's time to revisit our what and our why. Look back at your notes from the beginning of this session. You wrote about what you hoped to learn in this session, and more importantly, why this learning was important to you. Did you learn what you intended? Do you want to learn more? Check out the resources on the last slide of this presentation and also in the one-pager in Schoology. There is so much more out there. But also, don't get overwhelmed. We're doing new and extraordinary things to provide school during a pandemic.
Eyes up, hearts up, mind sharp, compassion on full blast. Okay, let's go.
More than 1,500 K-12 schools across the country plan to shut down.
We're now at a point where the appropriate path is to close schools.
I'm going to try my best not to get emotional during all of this, but our district is going to be closed for the next 6 weeks.
In case someone is watching this video from the future, there is a pandemic happening and schools all over the world are closing down.
I'm gonna have to pack up all my stuff and I am going to head home.
All right, we're headed out. Hopefully we will be here sooner rather than later.
Wow. This is not a break, guys. This is a time in which we are starting to figure out what remote learning could look like.
It's not a job that easily translates to working from home. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna do this?
How am I gonna teach social skills over the internet? Some of my students don't have internet.
We're all overwhelmed right now. We're all working from home.
Welcome to my makeshift teacher desk area. I'm sorry for the mess.
Multitasking in my pajamas.
I have been working on distance learning plans every waking hour.
All right, so I'm about to go in and start my first online lesson. This feels weird. I'm so nervous.
Hello, sir. I think your microphone is off.
Good morning. Week 3 of digital learning has begun. Oh snap, they could not even see today's work yet.
I know what you're gonna say. It's not working! Don't give up, guys. Don't lose hope.
Then you're gonna click go live. Good morning, pumpkins. Today we're gonna read another couple of chapters.
Here is the data.
That's 1. Let's see if we can do 10.
Welcome to band.
Guys, I'm not gonna lie, that just lifted my mood, like exponentially doing something for my kids. I miss them and I miss teaching.
I've gotten a couple emails from parents and good morning, thank you for the video. She misses you too. We'll keep in contact.
I feel like it's been a positive day of quarantine life and distance learning.
I almost have 100% participation, which I really didn't think was possible.
Day 2 went much better. Day 3 went much better. And so we are doing the very best that we can.
I hope you know, teachers, that you, my beautiful friends, are enough. Whatever instructions that you're providing, whatever tools that you're giving your students, it's all enough.
soon.
Bye, guys.
Well, thanks for learning with me today. This slide shows all the resources. And again, this is in a one-pager in Schoology. And don't forget to take your Schoology quiz so that you get credit for this course. Reach out if you have questions and make sure you connect with your colleagues and each other because this is hard work, but we're doing the best we can. Have a great day.